All right, so welcome everybody to the November 2022 Collaboration Cafe webinar, sponsored by the Midwest Big Data Innovation Hub with support from the National Science Foundation. My name is John MacMullen. I'm the Executive Director of the Midwest Hub, and I'm very happy today to welcome some fellows from the Foundation for Food and Agriculture Research Fellows Program to hear about their experience with that program and the different stages of that they're in currently. So we'll explore that program a little bit, and then we'll open it up to a discussion and Q&A with the fellows who are joining us today. So for those who are on the call for the first time, I wanted to give just a quick overview of the Hub community, who we are, what we do. Let me go ahead and share my screen to do that. And if folks have questions along the way here, feel free to drop those into the chat. We probably will have a small group live here today, so feel free also to unmute and ask questions along the way as well. All right, so the Midwest Hub is part of a national network of 4 hubs funded by NSF over the past several years. And so we're all focused on building communities and collaborations around research data and other data science topics within our geographic regions, but then collaborating together across the country in different ways as well. So this is a very active partnership that we have. And if you're watching this recording from outside the Midwest region, definitely feel free to reach out to the hub in your geographic area and look for ways that you might be able to engage with that community. In the Midwest, we have a 12-state region that we work within, which is obviously a great location for agriculture, which is one of our core theme areas that we have. We have a pretty thriving digital agriculture community that is led out of Iowa State University, but has partners from across the region as well. So that is really core to our topic for today, but we also focus on data science education and workforce development as well. And so I think this program that we're looking at today fits pretty nicely within both of those areas. I'm going to skip through the next couple of slides here pretty quickly, but just wanted to mention that this is a regular monthly webinar series that we have, with the exception of December, which we will not have next month. But we had a lot of community input over the past couple of years about the need for a venue that is sort of neutral and regional in scope to help bring together people from different disciplines and different universities to look at proposal development and collaboration opportunities. And so this is a way that we help to convene that kind of discussion. And so welcome folks to come back in the future for other programs that we'll look at and other discussions of collaboration around research data. We have a website for this program, as well as some shared documents and a Slack space where folks can engage as well. And we also record most of these sessions and have those available on our YouTube channel as well. So you can follow us there for updates of new sessions and check our website or our newsletter for upcoming sessions as well. We do engage with the community on research proposals in different ways. It's not really relevant to today's topic, but if you are developing proposals in the ag space in the future, we'd be happy to talk with you about ways that the hub can help support and amplify the work that you do. But today we want to focus on a particular program from the Foundation for Food and Agriculture, which is a nonprofit corporation established by the US Congress back in 2014. And it has a USDA affiliation, but is pretty independent in terms of its mission and programmatic activities. The Fellows program is one of their ongoing funding mechanisms, really intended to help early career researchers in food and ag develop leadership skills, develop connections across different disciplines and outside of their home institution, and really expand their career opportunities beyond academia into industry, government, and nonprofits as well. The Fellows Program covers a 3-year period, and so this is quite an extensive amount of time that is spent both in group activities as well as individual mentoring and professional development. So it's a pretty substantial time commitment, but also pretty well funded as well in the track that includes the funding for stipends. So we'll walk through the details of this program today, sort of the basics, but really with every funding opportunity that we look at on this webinar, it's really important to read the full program details and understand the specific elements that you would be responsible for if you were to propose to this program. For this particular cycle, the proposals are due as early as late February of next year. We'll talk about the differences between the two categories of fellows in a moment here, but February is the earliest if you're looking for funding to support your participation, and then notification of award happens as early as March, mid-March of next year. Okay, so what are the two different types of fellow programs that this supports? I mentioned the funding dimensions here a moment ago. So there is a track that involves funding through a stipend to cover things like tuition and fees, and I believe travel costs as well, to travel to the cohort activities throughout the 3-year period. And so that is a particular track that you have to select to apply to, and there's different criteria to include in that. There is a track that does not include the stipend funding, which has slightly different expectations for it, but they also have some scholarships available in a limited number to support folks in that track as well, and those are application based as a part of that overall process. Since the FAR group does other kinds of programming beyond the Fellows program, they have this set of 6 what they call challenge areas or focus areas that they are really focused on addressing as the core of all of their activities. And so when you apply to the Fellows program, they ask you to select one of these, which aligns most closely with your career interest and research interest, and that sort of drives part of your application process. And so you can see here the list of those 6, and they sort of range from basic biology kinds of concepts up into urban food systems, more of a socio-technical kind of track, and even into the health area and how that aligns with agriculture as well. So pretty diverse set of topic areas. It'll be interesting to hear from the fellows about how well these align with their particular interests, but quite a diverse range, including adjacent areas like water, for example. All right, so who is eligible for this program? It is focused on graduate students, particularly those who are on a PhD track. And so part of the eligibility requirements include either completion of a master's degree or some progress towards a PhD by the time of the award beginning next year. This is open to students at universities in the US and Canada, so tell your Canadian friends that they are eligible as well. And you must have enough time left in your degree program to really line up with the three-year timeline of the fellowship program. So that makes sense. You want to be early enough in your program that you still have some time left to do both, but really far enough along that you have a sense of what your research topic is and where your interests are going to be focused over that period of time. You have to have a PhD advisor already in place, in part because that person has to give you a letter of support for your package as well. But really that is kind of implied by the other requirements here, that you have some sense of where your research is already heading at that point. So those are the basics. There's quite a few other requirements in the program announcement around having a financial sponsor for your work, things like test scores and visa types. So again, it's really important to take a quick look at those before you get too far, to make sure that you are eligible if you're interested in applying. All right, so once you make it through the application process, what is the plan for how that is reviewed? We saw that it's a pretty tight timeline in terms of when you get notified about acceptance or decline. And so it's interesting to see how they address that process. There is a committee of people who have pretty diverse backgrounds. They come from academia as well as industry, and have different experiences within the life sciences and agricultural sciences. So, it looks like there's a committee that probably reviews some portion of the applications, and they probably discuss those as you would in a typical review panel. What FAR tells us in the program announcement is that some of this is based upon your interests in ag and food, and how those align with the foundation's interests. Unlike a lot of federal grant proposal solicitations, there isn't a lot of clarity around details of what criteria they're using to assess, as they say here, the quality of the student and their potential to impact the field. And so maybe we can hear a little bit from the fellows on the call today of their impression of what a strong package looks like in terms of proposing to this program. And then they also do say that folks who are finalists in this process may be invited to do an interview with committee members as well. And so to me, that sounds like if they have a lot of really highly qualified folks, they may go through a down selection process where they make those decisions based upon the interviews that they have. All right, so that sort of wraps up my quick overview of the program. Are there any questions before we move on to the general discussion about anything that I just went through? All right, we will open it up here in just a moment. I did want to note that we will not have a webinar next month, but we do have plans to run this series throughout 2023. And so our next session will be coming up in mid-January, focused on mid-career research this time, looking at the NSF Mid-Career Advancement Program. And then in February, we plan to look at another NIH program focused on data science and genomics around workforce development. So if you're interested in either of those topics, or colleagues who are, feel free to share that information with them, and we would look forward to seeing folks again on a future session. If you have suggestions about topics for this webinar, we'd be happy to hear those as well. We are very open to what the community is interested in terms of funding proposals and different agencies as well. On this webinar, we tend to focus on NSF, NIH, and USDA, but we are open to looking at other agencies and foundations as well. All right, so let's move over to the discussion today. I have some starter questions for our fellows who are on the call today, trying to get a sense of how your participation in the program has impacted the sort of three different categories that FAR is interested in around your research, around building your personal network as a scholar, and then professional development kinds of activities. So we can talk about any of those that are your experiences there. And then, just in general, how you would talk to a colleague who approaches you and says, hey, I'm interested in this program. What has your experience been? So that's sort of my my prompts for you, but maybe we can go around the room here and do some quick introductions for the fellows who are on the call. I can go down the list that I see here. Sara, would you like to go first?
Sure. Hi, my name is Sara Tondini, and I am a fourth year PhD candidate in the Animal Sciences Department at the University of Illinois. So my lab focuses on beef cattle nutrition, but I focus on microbiology. So my research looks to decipher rumen microbial interactions and predict substrate degradation to improve efficiency of ruminant production systems. And so my research aligns with the Advanced Animal Systems Challenge area. And that's what I applied to for my FAR package. Yeah.
Sounds great. So when I drive down Race Street here in Urbana and I see the cows on the left-hand or the right-hand side of the road, that's your population that you work with?
Yep.
That's
yep.
great.
That's them.
How about Addy? You're next here.
Yep. Hi, I'm Addy. I'm a fourth year PhD student at Kansas State University. I'm studying wheat breeding and genetics, so I'm kind of split in between the next generation crops and health agriculture nexus challenge area so far. I'm in the fourth cohort of FFAR Fellows, so I'm in the second year of the overall program, so pretty exactly halfway through it. I can't exactly remember all the questions that you put on the slide, but as far as it's helped my research, I think a big thing that the fellowship helps is kind of providing support in actually communicating your research to a general scientific audience, and then just to other fellows who are in lots of different fields, and just getting used to presenting your research in different ways to different types of people. As far as my personal network, of course, all the other fellows within a cohort, we're all, we're pretty close. We hang out afterwards and stuff, ask each other questions even when we're not together. So that's been a really big benefit. And then for professional development, I can't remember if this was mentioned on the previous slide, but you are required to have a couple industry mentors through the program. So that's been really helpful to me because not only have I made connections with those industry mentors, but also with other people that they have connected me with. And I've also just gotten more opportunities to learn about potential jobs. I can't remember if there are any other questions.
Yeah, that's a great start, and we can come back to some of those for sure. Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Annemarie, how about you?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Annemarie. I'm happy to be here. So I'm also at the University of Illinois, out by the cows, not in Chicago. I'm in the 6th year of my PhD in food science and human nutrition. So we don't work with the cows, we work with humans in the lab that I work in. We do big clinical trials with humans, we give them different foods, and we see how that changes their microbiome and some different health parameters. And so I was in the 2019 FAR cohort. So I finished up last year, so I'm finished, but they really do stay in contact with you, which is great. I still get emails about different events and different things you can still learn about and keep learning. So it's really great. Several different things I like about the programs to touch on. One is, like was mentioned before, the mentors, which is great because I'm naturally I don't like network a lot. So this program really kind of helped me get out of my comfort zone and actually reach out to people. So one of my mentors was from Kellogg, and she helped me get some opportunities to do some different speaking for some of their R&D teams that she was a part of there. So that was really great exposure for me to actually learn, how to communicate better with different groups of people. And then I also had a mentor, which was really helpful. And she was a professor at a university at the time, but she had also been in academia, so currently, as well as industry. So she had several different viewpoints she could kind of share with me throughout the program. So that was just very helpful to be able to talk to all of them. And then also something else they taught us it was just different ways you can kind of manage up with your supervisor, which is helpful as a grad student, because sometimes, you feel like, you're just told always what to do. And you're not quite sure, when you should speak up and talk about your ideas, depending on your advisor. All advisors are different, but it kind of helped depending on the different labs that you're in. If you have a big lab with lots of people, it might be hard to schedule meetings with your advisor as well. So they kind of taught us different strategies on how, what's easiest to communicate with your advisor and make sure you keep progressing in your research. So those are just a few of the things I learned, and there are a lot more things as well that I'd be happy to talk about later.
Great, thanks very much. And yes, managing your advisor is a key success factor for being a PhD student. I can confirm that from both sides of the fence there. Okay, and then we have Paul as well. Hi, Paul.
Hi, my name is Paul, and I'm from the Department of Animal Science at Purdue University. My research is in the microbiome of piglets, just trying to understand what happens around weaning with the hope of developing a therapy instead of antibiotics. The Fellows program has been great. I think on the biggest impact it has had on my research is communication, like Addy said earlier. We've done a lot of work around communicating your science, presentation, even posters recently. So that has been really, really great. On the personal development, I think at the beginning, when we started, it was really hectic because we were doing a lot of understanding your strength and weakness and stuff. And so at first, it made me self-aware of strength and weakness. But now it just seems to flow easily, that I just recognize that, oh, this is something that you should work on. I mean, it's just easy. It's easier now because at the beginning it was a conscious effort, but as we kept on doing so many things, it got better. And on the industry side, I also have a mentor from Elanco, now Biomedit, and so it's been great. My mentor works directly in animal and human microbiome, so I've had a lot of opportunities. And recently trying to do research collaboration with them and stuff. So it's been really great.
Great, thanks very much, Paul. All right, so we've heard a little bit about people's backgrounds. It sounds like we have a good mix of where people are in the program. Thank you, Annemarie, for coming back and talking about this with us, even though you have already finished. Sara, I don't remember what stage you are. Are you pretty early in the process now?
This is my last year. So
Okay.
I was the cohort after Annemarie, and I think before Addy and Paul.
Mm-hmm. So, as you guys have gone through the different years, what has been different for you in those stages? So give folks who aren't familiar with the program a little sense of what the progression looks like. We heard from Paul that there's some early understanding of your personal strengths and weaknesses and how you might develop those over the period. But what does that flow look like from the initial meeting that you have as a group, and how does that develop over time?
I would say I would go along with what Paul said, where at the beginning of the program, you focus a lot on your personal development, I guess is what I might call it. And your strengths and weaknesses, how you function within your respective groups. And then I can only speak to the first half of second year, I guess, but we've done a lot more of working in teams and facilitating groups and teams and stuff like that. And then I know next semester we'll start moving into a lot more policy stuff. And all along the way, we've had different tours and webinars with people from different industries, different career fields. So that's kind of scattered all in there. And we've gotten a decent amount of more practical skills, I would say, poster, how to make a good poster, good presentations, stuff like that.
Sara, how about you? You're sort of in between Paul and Addy and Annemarie. And so what has your experience been the past couple of years?
Yeah, so definitely agree on kind of starting out with self-awareness, moving into more team building, and then also, getting feedback and working with feedback and kind of getting to be more of a leader in that position kind of in your second year. And then in the third year that I'm in now, it's like, okay, now we're getting ready to interview, find a job. So all of our webinars are kind of focused on that, transitioning from academia to industry or reviewing CVs and interviews, things like that. And so the program very much follows how a PhD program would go, kind of start out with self-awareness, move into groups, and then, okay, now we're getting ready to leave. And so they do a really good job of kind of mimicking that.
That's great. And Annemarie, you made it to the end. And so, looking back now, what was that progression like for you? Does that make sense the way that they organized it?
Yeah, I definitely agree on what all of you have been saying so far too. I found the same things. I definitely saw a progression because something I think is so valuable about the program is it really is so focused, on that professional development and like different soft skills, which, like in the lab, there's different protocols. You can check off boxes like I did this, I did this, I did this, but you don't really think of doing that in terms of like your own professional like development skills like that. Like for me, it was like communication, networking, and you can actually, kind of make a plan just like you would with your research and be like, did I meet these goals? Did I like reach out to this many people, after this conference? Did I just kind of be like, oh, that's great information, but not really follow up with anybody? You can actually make concrete goals and follow through. So what the program really taught me was that I can actually, make a plan to advance these things that are kind of, up in the air. You don't really think you can make a plan about, but you can. So like I definitely saw I'm better with communicating with different people now, giving presentations to different groups of people, just all kinds of different things like that. So definitely, following their progression, and I really liked too. So in addition to different industry mentors and academic mentors, you also just the mentors within the program, like they do really care about you and your development. They're all so nice, so friendly. I'm sure all of you can attest to that. And they really do I'll have coaching sessions with them, and they'll really help give you really good feedback because they've gone through a lot, in their careers and similar things. So they can really walk you through different things that you might be struggling with or need some advice with.
That's great. Yeah. And, we often hear about soft skills and how important they are, but, you're speaking to the fact that soft skills can be sort of quantified in some ways. You can develop a plan and you can make sure that you're doing the things that are necessary to improve your skills in that way. So that sounds great that they're helping you, see that sort of mindset of building that skill set. I heard communication a lot in the discussions that you all had. And definitely in my experience, that is something that isn't necessarily taught in grad school about, how to do an effective presentation or how to teach a class or, those kinds of things. And so it sounds like that was pretty impactful for you all. Have you used those skills as you developed, other posters and research papers or talks at different sessions?
I can go first.
Yeah.
I think the presentation part has been one of the biggest help for my research. And I think for a lot of people that I've spoken with in the fellowship, because at the beginning, I think the first week that we spent at the beginning of the fellowship, there was a communication consultant that came specifically to talk about science communication, and it was a really good experience. She gave us a template of what presentation that we can use, like a PowerPoint template that we can use, and it was just a lot of learning. I think at the beginning it was hard to implement everything, but I think over time, and I think that's the good side also, is that we didn't just learn the communication one time. It's something that kept on coming. We kept on doing things around communication, learning. We had webinars around communication again. The second time, the second year now, we've still been doing things around communication, and we have even done how to make posters and the rest. So I think it's been really great to be able to communicate to everybody effectively. Probably that's the right word to use, like communicating your science in a simple and effective way. And I think the program generally does a very good job at doing that. And I also think there's opportunity to write like probably like blog articles about your research that can be posted on the website. I haven't done that, but I think the opportunities to do that. I think one other thing is just, we also have a lot of things around social media communication. I don't think we talked about that, which is all around science communication that we talked about. That we had somebody come teach us about social media, tweets, and using Twitter and stuff. I mean, they are basic things, but there are things that really like, for me, that I'm not like that much of a social media person. It was really good that I've been thinking about it a lot more than I would usually think about it. So it's good.
Yeah, that's very interesting because it seems like that is a trend in science where folks are sort of building their personal brands as an expert in an area and trying to communicate that to the larger scientific community and using tools like social media potentially to do that. Other experiences that folks had around communication learnings there, Sarah?
Yeah, bringing up the sort of social media aspect, I feel like had it not been for FFAR, I probably wouldn't have been on LinkedIn until like 6 months before graduation, you know. It just wasn't something I was doing in my master's and I wasn't really thinking about it, but that they really kind of drive home that communication aspect and networking aspect. And that made me feel more confident to be on LinkedIn and be active and share my research and connect with people. And I have connected with people through LinkedIn, and I didn't really think that that was maybe possible before FFAR. So.
Yeah, I saw Addy unmute there as well.
Yeah, I actually, for FFAR last spring, I'm assuming the people in earlier cohorts also had to do this, but I know Paul and I had to do some presentations using these pretty specific guidelines set by the program. And so I actually recycled that presentation for a department seminar that I had to give. And it was interesting to see the type of feedback I got. And I know that I wouldn't have gotten that if I hadn't used some of the skills that were taught to me through this program. For example, I was told a lot about how clearly they could understand what I was talking about, even if it wasn't within like their specific subject area. So I thought that was a good way to kind of affirm like what we were learning really does make a difference when you're talking to a scientific audience who might not always know your exact research. And then, yeah, I think Paul was talking about like how not only does it make us better at communicating our science, but it provides more avenues for communication. So in this past summer, I got a blog post published through FFAR. So that is just like a kind of unique way to show your research. And yeah, I would go along with what Sara was talking about too on LinkedIn. Like I never really used LinkedIn at all before FFAR, and I still like am not super great at it, but I mean, they kind of make you try a little bit. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we heard earlier from Annemarie about that, you know, bumping you out of your comfort zone and having you try things that are new to you. And I really liked your comment about being able to communicate your research to people who are not specialists in that area. I think that is a place where you can have some challenges if you're in just a core research group. You don't have a lot of engagement with other folks. You may have a challenge in communicating why it's important that you're looking at this very specific thing. And so getting some practice in storytelling about the work that you do and why it's important to people who don't really have any understanding of that can be really impactful, I think.
Like, if I may say something else, I think the science communication that we start learning is not just until, it didn't start until we had a consultant come talk to us. Mm-hmm. I think it started because the cohort was really diverse. At least my cohort were about 25, Addy, did I get it right? 25 or 26. And I always say that was probably the first time I was in a room with like pretty much different kind of people, like doing different things. Like people in soil science, people in environmental sustainability and stuff. And that every time you have to, when we came in and we had to start telling each other about our research and stuff, it was just like the beginning of starting to learn to communicate your science in a very simple way. Because when some people were talking about what do you do, I was like, I don't understand this. But I remember that at the end of 1 week, the people came and said, oh, okay, I think I get what you're doing now. Like it was just like a kind of a gradual development just by speaking with each other, communicating with different people in the cohort. It was just, it made you start thinking about, okay, this person has to understand what I'm saying. He doesn't understand it. So
That's great. Yeah. So I'm sure that you all had that experience of talking with fellows who are doing very different things from you, and maybe you learned something new. But did that stimulate for anybody thinking about new research opportunities based upon those conversations, or maybe new collaborations that you'd like to pursue with people who are outside your specialty based upon that engagement with them?
I would say, I guess, at least for me personally, not necessarily new research opportunities, because I don't know if the other fellows would agree with this, but like within my cohort, there's no one who's really like working on something super similar to what I'm working on. But what it has really helped in is having people who have different strengths, to where you have just so many more resources. So I was working on analyzing some data at one of the residential sessions we were at, and I was stuck on something for months and months and months. And then someone in a completely different field from me, who just happened to have done this analysis also, was able to like fully fix it in like 1 minute, which was equal parts annoying and equal parts very exciting. So I think that that's really valuable. Just like you think that you're all alone doing something and there's no one else in your field who can help you, but you don't realize like how many other people are doing the same thing and are just, it's like super easy for them.
Yeah, our cohort has like a group chat, and we will often ask each other, like, I can't get this protocol to run. Does anybody have a protocol? And like that, couldn't do RNA extraction, and one of my people in my cohort could, and sent me a protocol, and I got it to work like the next week. Or like, where should I send these samples? Have any of you ever got this analysis done? Oh yeah, here, you can send it here. So we've definitely helped each other with like research aspects. Just because it's just such, like Paul was saying, such a diverse array of students, and we've all kind of are in different sort of fields, but we're all kind of working on science. And so lots of things overlap in that aspect. And that's been really great to have the cohort to kind of lean on. And I will say also my mentor started as my mentor, my industry mentor is now part of my committee. And so that wasn't initially what I had planned, but we just aligned so well with a lot of things. And she had a lot of suggestions for my research and things that I could add on to my experiments. And so she became a part of my committee. And so that's been really helpful too.
That's very interesting. So yeah, folks have mentioned industry mentors today. That is more common in some fields than others. And so maybe you can talk a little about whether that was something new to your area, the idea of working with somebody in industry, and how that has gone for you either way.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to that. I was kind of curious how you go about developing this relationship with, or, actually getting an industry mentor. Is that like in collaboration with your academic advisor, or is that something you do on your own, or how does that process work?
Yeah, I can talk about this because I do work in a field where we do collaborate, or at least my advisor collaborates closely with other industry members and knows a lot of them. So it was actually a very easy process for me to find these mentors. I pretty much asked my advisor who he would recommend based on what I was looking for and specifically what he could not provide me. So in this case, he found two women in my field who had unique experiences from what he could offer. And as far as FFAR goes, there's just like a pretty simple like mentor-mentee like yearly contract or something. I think we have to sign. I don't know if you guys remember that part, but yeah, and so it's been really great for me just not only to have these industry connections, but to just have a way to ask questions about, especially as we think about finding jobs, like what does your company look for in a candidate? And one of my mentors actually connected me with the person who helps hire people, just as like a little bonus. And so she even, you know, has mentioned to me like, yeah, whenever you're ready to find a job, we can bring you out and try to find a place where you might fit within our company. And so it's been a really great experience for me. And yeah.
Yeah, so for mine, my two main mentors, one of them, she knew, the one who worked at Kellogg, my advisor already knew her and they'd written some papers together. So that's how that connection was made. And then she was also interested in the program. And then the other one, I met her at a conference. She came up to my poster I was presenting and we were talking. And then she came up, she was drawn to my poster because she also knew my advisor, because my advisor is very good with networking, unlike me. So I'm glad that that match was made. But so she came up and we started talking. And then after I heard about, you know, what she did, since she was specifically in academia and in industry, I'm like, wow, this would be really cool. You know, maybe she would like to do something like this. So I actually went up to her later in that conference when I saw her again and asked if she might like to be my other mentor in the program. And she said yes. So it was hard for me to go up and talk to her again after that. But I feel like that was my starting point, you know, in the program, just trying to learn, because I think because you can basically add more mentors as you go throughout the program as well. So I think, you know, as I started learning about, you know, the importance of networking, she was my second mentor. So that FFAR kind of gave me the push I needed to kind of start reaching out to people more. So that's kind of how I got my mentors. And something else I just want to say too is I feel like the relationship that you have with the mentors is really, you know, what you put into it. Because it's I think, you know, the requirement, like Addy said, like you're supposed to meet with them, you know, at least once a year, but you can, a lot of them, you know, are happy to meet more than that too. It's, you know, if you have specific questions you have for them or want to develop that relationship further, you know, I feel like most of these people are happy to talk with you more, also give you more advice. So it's kind of, you know, what both of you need from that relationship.
I think for me, how I got my mentor was a little bit different. So I was looking for somebody that was working in the interface of animal microbiology and human microbiology. And I was also looking specifically for somebody that has done something that is in an industry that I'm related to. So in the company that I'm really interested in. So my PI didn't have anybody like close to that. So I went online to search. So I found somebody on LinkedIn. I didn't know the person at all, had no connection, just no contact, not even the email of the person. And I sent a friend request on LinkedIn and the person wouldn't respond. Message the person on LinkedIn and the person wouldn't respond. And I remember that I did a project with somebody in Elanco who may know the person. So I asked the program director at FFAR that I've been trying to reach out to this person and the person is not responding on LinkedIn. And I was like, okay, just asking me, who do I know that may know this person? They can reach out to the person on my behalf, try and get the person's contact for me. But it's a good exercise if I learn how to like find this kind of connection. So I remember the person I had worked with in Elanco a long time ago. And I was like, okay, I asked him that, oh, I want to reach out to this person, but the person is not responding on LinkedIn. And immediately he sent me he just sent a connection that, okay, this person is trying to reach out to you. This is a person, I know this person somewhere. And once they connected me, and I just sent a follow-up email to the person, and we set up a meeting, and everything just went there. So it was, my mentor was more like somebody I found on LinkedIn. And later he told me that, oh, sorry, I didn't respond on LinkedIn. All through the time you were messaging me because I didn't check. So he was that was kind of a different kind of, and I'm looking to add something else to a second mentor now that will be a little bit different from what I have now. And interestingly, the mentor that I have in biomedics, now it used to be Elanco, now biomedics, they've had to kind of co-sponsor one of the research I've done. Not because, I don't think it's because of my mentor, it was just like, it just happened. Like, but it's just like, it's also good because people in the industry are becoming aware of who you are, like the kind of research you do, the kind of similarity or where there is overlap between what you do and what you're doing. And so they know when they need help and they can like come maybe to you, to your lab or somebody. Like, so it's kind of like a good relationship.
That's great. Very interesting to hear about those mentoring experiences. Those can be super valuable. I'm wondering, you know, based upon those conversations with people, whether they're from industry or just areas that you haven't worked in before, has being a fellow changed your career interests or your research interests in some way, you know, having had those experiences?
Mine has a little bit. I started really wanting to do industry, and I still am very interested in doing that. But we went to Washington, D.C. this past spring and learned a lot more about policy and USDA and like what research scientists at USDA do. And that was not even an option I was aware of. Kind of in my lab, it's like you can do academia and you could be a professor, or you can go into industry and do R&D. I didn't even really realize that like USDA research scientist was a possibility. And so we went to DC and we were there for like a whole week, and we learned about all of these things in this whole sort of field that I didn't even really know was an option. And so I started to more seriously look into that, and actually just recently applied for a USDA research position because of FAR and kind of knowing a little bit more about what that would entail and feeling comfortable being able to do that kind of with the background that they provided within the program.
That's very interesting. I don't know if USDA is one of the agencies that works with the program that I'm putting in the chat here, but the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship Program is a pretty long-standing program that gets into some of those policy focus kinds of dimensions as well. And so that has been really valuable to people in my network to go through that program, you know, as a post-PhD kind of experience.
They had a representative from AAAS that came and spoke to us during that week. So yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, but you know, working within an agency as a staff member, it can definitely be, you know, another way to do that as well, for sure.
Hey everybody, I'm JD Graham. I'm with the MBDH. I've been listening, and you really seem to be concentrating on the communication, interpersonal skills, the leadership that you've learned through this program. Is there any time that you realized maybe you were doing it ineffectively? Like you learned, hey, the way I was doing it really wasn't working, and then you saw this new way. Maybe you guys have had mentors or an actual speaker address it. Can you give me any ideas of where you feel like you've grown in those areas?
I can also go first. I can go first. I think around communication, I think it has changed the way I first make my slide when I'm going to for a presentation. Because I just noticed that this way they are telling us seems, at first it was kind of hard taking it, but just like Addy said, after a few presentations and you get feedback, then you know certainly that this seems to be a better way. The feedback are just way better. I think one of the things that was like striking to me is when we did crucial conversation, how to have crucial conversation with people. And I'm the kind of person that if something is really, if it has not gotten so bad, then I'll approach you and talk about it. Most other time, I will try to avoid it. And it was just really different now that even issues that are, any issue I need to like speak with people, no matter how easy or how difficult that conversation is, I actually know how to approach it, how to work around it. So that was completely different. Like it was a complete shift from what I would typically do to what I do now. So it was like, I know that, okay, avoiding it is not the right thing to do. Just running away from your problem is not going to solve it. You probably have to like approach it in a very, in a way better way. So I think there are a lot of other things. I'll just say there's a lot of things I've seen that I don't do as well as I should, and I've learned like a better way. Those are just 2 examples.
Yeah, I definitely agree about the crucial conversations piece, because I think, especially when you just are kind of on a single track through academia, you get used to kind of a hierarchical organization where if you don't really agree, or if you're bothered by something that your supervisor or just anyone above you does or says, you just kind of like, oh, accept it, gotta respect them, move on, just deal with it. Whereas FAR kind of takes an approach more similar to industry, where organizations are more of a network where it's most important to, just share ideas essentially. So we started the whole program like at our first residential session, starting that crucial conversations piece. And within a couple months, I was already able to use those skills and apply them and have a crucial conversation of my own, and went really well. So yeah, definitely agree with what Paul said there.
Yeah, I agree with what both of you are saying. I found the same things, like especially the crucial conversations, because I also tend, like if things are going, well enough, I don't want to rock the boat. I'm just like, oh, we'll figure it out. We'll be fine. But sometimes you definitely need to have those conversations. And something that kind of helped me look at that more, I'm assuming the program still does it. When I did FAR, we had like a 360 evaluation. And if people haven't done that before, that's when it basically you get lots of different kind of people that you work with, from your advisor, just to your peer coworkers in your lab, to maybe undergraduate students you might supervise, and you'll have a bunch of people fill out anonymous just kind of survey about you, like with different strengths, how well that they perceive you each is doing. And when I got the results back for that, I noticed that a few like areas for mine were different between different groups. Like one group thought, I had this characteristic, but another group, it wasn't coming through as much. I wasn't quite sure why. So that helped me kind of look through more. And some of the feedback they can give you is like actual like sentences, writing out, some more about the thoughts. It's not just like scales for each thing. So that kind of helps me think about, how I communicate with different groups of people if I'm coming across different ways with others. Like, for example, like one of mine showed that like my self-confidence was low or like low, middle, coming from some of like my superiors versus some of the students who I work with. So I feel like maybe I'm like more comfortable, working with my students, walking them through a process, versus if I'm giving a presentation for my committee members, I'm very scripted. So like I used to, to make sure, I hit all the points. I like to, definitely read from a script or look for my slides so I don't miss anything, or in case I get nervous. But I've found that you actually sound a lot more confident, and I'm able to work on some of these skills I found out that I was lacking in when I sound less scripted. Because I feel like example for FAR, like when I gave a presentation for the R&D group at Kellogg, I instead of going off of a specific script, I really worked hard, on just going through the material and then just talking, from what I knew, and if you miss things, they're not going to know it's your presentation. So I just feel like that kind of helped me gain more confidence going through the program. So then it's easier to give presentations like for different people, like I mentioned before. So definitely that evaluation from coming from a lot of different people really helped me a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like it's almost not a roadmap, but just kind of more of a nudge for who you already are, mm-hmm. and to help you develop into that person. I think you guys will all discover you can't be somebody else, right? You have to be you. And sometimes you want to find that person out there and go, I want to be like that person. And that's great to have somebody you want to be like, but it sounds like you've all developed into your own people. And this program seems like it's really doing that for you. Thanks for those answers.
All right, we are very close to the end of our time here. Is there anything that we haven't talked about so far that you would want to tell to someone interested in the FFAR Fellows program?
I know we haven't talked about like the actual application process, and if anybody actually wants to apply, I actually applied for the 2019 year. that Annemarie's in, and I didn't get accepted, but the director messaged my advisor and I and said, hey, apply next year and focus on these things. And so it was a closely aligning my research with one of the challenge systems or one of the challenge areas, and then more relating myself personally to how the professional development would help me. And so then in the second year when I applied, I did my package as much more of a narrative, and I brought a lot more of my personality into it, and I had a better idea of what my project was so I could more closely align it with the system. And then that year was the year I got accepted. So I just wanted to share that in case anybody did want to apply.
Yeah, that's great to know. On this call, we often have prior awardees to talk about their proposal experience, and we invariably hear from people who said, yeah, the first time or the first 2 times I didn't get the grant, but I got some feedback from people and I resubmitted and I got it. So that's always good to hear. Addy, did you unmute as well?
Yeah, definitely the same thing that Sara said, like be able to talk about your career progression as a story, both integrating like your personal life with your research. But other than that, the only little thing I wanted to say is that if there are any other questions, I think our contacts are on the FFAR Fellows website, so you can always reach out to me with any other questions. I won't speak for the other fellows, but
You can definitely reach out to me also.
Yeah, me too. I'm happy to answer any questions. And actually, Sara, I applied in 2018 and I didn't get in until the next year. So I had a similar experience, and I'm really glad that it worked out. So I would definitely encourage anyone to do the program. Like, you really learn a lot of skills and gain a lot of support that you wouldn't have otherwise as a graduate student.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. This has been super interesting to hear about your experiences. We really appreciate you taking the time today with us, but also really being open about your experiences and what has worked for you and helped you in your career. So I know it's a busy time of the semester, so we really appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Yeah, that's great advice that you just provided.
Absolutely.
Really.
So as you go through your career and you start writing proposals and you're looking for collaborators, we hope you come back to this webinar, and certainly feel free to reach out to the hub as well. We can help in several different ways in getting you connected to other people. So thanks again for being here. We look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.